We are back on Religious Hard Talk. Derrick Gillespie, Seventh-day Adventist apologist, is here to defend the Seventh-day Adventist Church against some of the stunning charges which were made by then member Dr. Andre Hill. We are now discussing the predictions of Seventh-day Adventist founder Ellen G. White vis-a-vis the second coming of Christ, as well as Jesus' own words about his second coming. Derrick Gillespie.
Yes, as I was saying, the reality is that when we compare carefully, I mean, I could give you a string of texts where the early Christians, the writers of the New Testament, spoke definitively of the coming of Jesus as if it would have been in their time. It was not just an expectancy. They spoke definitively, and in fact, I'd like to quote Paul giving one specific description of the time in which he lived, therefore saying that he expected Jesus to return in his time. And then I'm going to come back and explain what I was saying about Jesus' own utterances. Here is what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. But this I say, brethren, the time is short. It's not a case where he's saying, you know, I believe that Jesus might be coming soon. He's speaking on the inspiration.
Yes.
But I say, brethren, the time is short. That remaineth, that both they that have wives be as though they have none.
That was very...
In other translations, like the International Standard Version, it says the time is short. From now on, those who have wives should live as though they had none. This is being specific.
Hard to misunderstand that, yes.
Just as Jesus was specific that there are some standing here who will see me coming with angels, coming in my Father's glory, giving rewards to all, and they will never taste of death. Now, the question is did Jesus prophesy falsely? And I say no. If you look at the two quotes I gave, the explanations, once you study carefully what the Bible is presenting, you will see that Jesus did not prophesy falsely. Because first of all, all over the book of John, Jesus described all those who are his followers as people who will never die. He said to them, if you follow my sayings, if you keep my words, you will never die. And every time Jesus speaks about the disciples never seeing death, never dying, he always refers immediately to the resurrection. So in other words, in such an assurance that you will be resurrected, it will be as if you never died. In fact, the Bible speaks of God speaking of things as if they were already before they actually happened. So here it is, Jesus is saying to his disciples, some of you will never die. You will never taste of death until you see me coming in my kingdom with my angels, with my Father's glory, and of course, to give rewards. So much
dancing.
It's not dancing, Ian. It is because if Jesus had not given this style of language which says, those who follow me, you will never die. No, this could never mean that Jesus is speaking literally.
Yes. But because that's an example of forced harmonization on your part, because you believe by faith that the Bible cannot contradict itself. I mean, that's not an ears we don't want to go into.
That's what a critic would say.
Yes,
but the reality is that
you're really straining to maintain the infallibility of the Bible when the evidence would seem on the surface not to sustain that.
What I'm saying is that
but that's not the main point.
I see, I understand what you're saying.
But I understand your point.
But the point I'm trying to make is to compare Ellen White's descriptions in the same kind of language, with the same kind of expectancy. And if Bible writers did the same thing, Jesus himself did the same thing, and it has an explanation.
And your point is, that people who still believe in the Bible, who would use Ellen G. White to say, no, she's wrong, they have an explanation to do with the Bible.
In other words,
if they are to be consistent.
Hill is called upon to be consistent.
That's right,
about the Bible that he still supports.
So you make that point.
And so
but it probably proves too much.
It doesn't prove too much because the point I'm making, Ian,
I see your point.
The point
aiming at those who would seek to undercut Adventism. What you show is, if they continue to believe in the Bible, that they have problems also.
The point I'm making, Ian, is this: that if you look at those instances in the Bible itself,
this 1888 one, listen to,
you will realize that there is not a false prophecy in Ellen White's utterances.
Listen to it again. The hour will come, it is not far distant, and some of us who now believe will be alive upon the earth.
Yes. It is
That
just,
doesn't seem
it
to be
is
talking
just
about a
like
second.
Paul saying the time is short, and therefore it doesn't even matter marrying again. That's 2,000 years ago. He said that, you know. It is
That
just,
is troubling
it is
too.
just like Peter, who said the end of all things is at hand or is near.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, somebody could ask, if nobody knows the day nor the hour, how can you refer to something being near when you do not know how far or near it really is?
Yes.
The point I'm making is that Jesus himself gave the disciples that freedom to speak of the second coming as if it is tomorrow, though not necessarily prophesying a specific date. So in other words, Jesus is expecting his disciples to always be ready. Because in an hour there you think not, the Son of Man cometh. And so they were always to keep that picture in front of the minds of Christians, that the coming can be tomorrow, the coming can be today, and of course it has been nearly 2,000 years
this
now.
Passage here,
Yes.
not only say could be, you know,
Yes.
some of us who now believe will be alive.
And I'm
That's
saying it
definitive,
is,
that's concrete.
and I'm saying it is the same kind of language style that we see in the Bible. Now let me explain quickly.
All right.
Let me explain quickly, Ian, that I'm not trying to undermine the Bible.
No,
what I'm
you're not
doing
trying
is
that.
illustrating and comparing.
You're apologetic, but you're not doing that directly. But indirectly, your argument serves to do that. That's why I'm saying it proves too much. But I understand your point against the critics of Adventism who would maintain belief in the Bible. That point stands. But it might stand at the expense of the whole shebang Bible and E.G. White's writings.
here's the
No.
point.
But that's another issue.
And here's the
I
point,
understand
yeah.
your apologetic method.
If I'm looking at the bigger picture, and if the Bible itself cannot stand the scrutiny in terms of those utterances, then why should I be defending Ellen White, which is a smaller little picture in the bigger picture? And so the point I'm making is that it's not diversionary or trying to undermine. I'm being illustratory.
You're a good debater. That's all I know.
And so I am convinced that because of these biblical principles that were at play, Ellen White never gave a specific date, but she spoke in the same style as the Bible writers and Jesus himself, and therefore she did not falsely prophesy.
Yes. Her statements on masturbation, and Andre made a lot of that, and you know, the implication was to show the absurdity of it.
Yes.
Our statements, and to show that medical science and even our own now Adventist church literature differs, does not hold to the kinds of maladies that masturbation was supposed to inflict. Let's talk about that, because she talked about all kinds of things that would happen to you if you masturbate. And in Adventist medical literature itself, that is dismissed.
You know, Ian, interestingly, when I first read those statements from Ellen White, I myself was taken aback.
You were?
Oh, yes.
You admit that?
I remember years ago when I read them.
Yes.
I should probably say this. Dr. Hill's journey and mine has been different.
Okay.
We confront the same data.
Yes.
We look at the same set of information, and yet...
But you're a true believer.
The difference in terms of perspective is what leads us to different conclusions. And here is the thing. When I read those statements years ago, I myself was taken aback, and I could not make the connection between masturbation and these illnesses. Interestingly, Ian, I have learned from studying a simple thing called science that her utterances are demonstrable. Oh yes, they're certainly are.
Let me remind the people of
I have it in front of me here. I can read it.
Various diseases, such as catarrh. Is it catarrh? Catarrh. Dropsy, headache, loss of memory and sight, great weakness in the back and loins, affections of the spine and head, often decays inwardly, cancerous, I guess it's tumor, which lie within which lie dormant in the system.
It's actually human. That's the word they use in those days.
Yes.
Yes.
All
is inflamed and commences eating destructive work. The mind is often utterly ruined,
and insanity
takes place.
And by the way, a note that Dr. Felix Cox's statement in his 2007 book, Sex and Love, he says, in the past, masturbation was thought to be the cause of serious diseases that young people feared, and so felt guilty when they masturbated. The old warnings that the solitary vice masturbation destroys the brain or can cause blindness or other terrible diseases can no longer be supported. And this is being sold, this book is being sold in the Adventist book centers that disagree strongly.
Yes. An interesting thing about that book. I got the book. I bought the book.
You bought the book?
Oh yes.
Okay.
And I found the page and I read.
I see.
And what I always love is not for somebody just to say something, but to give evidence to prove it.
Okay, evidence.
And the fact is, I can simply say that, you know, Dr. Felix Cortez, while the book, I read it, it's a book for young people.
But he's wrong.
But on that particular point, he has spoken too soon.
Spoken too soon.
And interestingly, I have no problem with saying that.
So we probably should remove it from the Adventist book centers.
Not necessarily.
Oh.
The point is that within our church there's an amount of freedom of expression in issues that are not necessarily so fundamental to undermine the movement in terms of its core doctrines. But there's freedom to express on certain issues, and that has always been the policy of the Adventist Church.
The final break at this point. Derrick Gillespie has a mass of information, a mass of data to share, and we're going to give him equal time. He's going to be back next week to continue this discussion. But you know it's not boring, you know it's not dragging at all. We are going through the information carefully. We take our final break on Religious Hard Talk. Seventh-day Adventist apologist Derrick Gillespie boldly confronts the charges of Dr. Andre Hill, who came on the last season of Religious Hard Talk with a series of arguments against Seventh-day Adventism and its founder, Ellen G. White. But Derrick Gillespie is showing that his words were not the last words. That there is indeed, contrary to what Andre Hill had written subsequently to his appearing on this show, that there is an answer that can be made to the charges that he has brought against the faith. And we're talking specifically about the issue of masturbation.
Yes, and I'm saying that, interestingly, science is an ever-growing body of knowledge.
Science, yes.
And so what you find is that as research continues, new things are discovered. And I found it particularly interesting that the recent findings of science itself actually disproves Dr. Felix Cortez in his book, Sex with Love. And it also disproves the critics. And it disproves Dr. Hill himself as it concerns masturbation being at the foundation of some of the diseases, terrible diseases, I might add. Oh, certainly.
Like what?
The problem that people have is that they assume that it is masturbation itself which causes the diseases, but they don't reason from the cause and effect by looking at how things are connected. Now, I learned recently that since Ellen White made her pronouncements in the 1800s, at that time there was no knowledge of this thing called zinc deficiency. And the fact that zinc as a very critical nutrient in the body is so crucial to the immune system, to the functioning of the brain. In fact, Dr. Hill himself, if he does the research, will realize that the very hippocampus, the base of the brain, which has a lot to do with mental illnesses, Alzheimer's, it is an area that is rich in zinc. And what happens is that whenever the body is short on zinc, that zinc is removed from that area and taken to other parts of the body. But here's the point I'd like to make. Scientists are now discovering, very many medical doctors, as a matter of fact, are now recognizing that since 1963, a Dr. Ananda Prasad from the Wayne State University discovered how crucial zinc is to the body, and that once there is a deficiency of zinc, it can lead to so many diseases. I have so many quotes here.
Shows the connection between masturbation and zinc.
And that's the point I'm going to make. The next discovery about this matter of zinc is that zinc, interestingly, is most concentrated in fluid form in the body, nowhere else as much as it is concentrated in semen and in the sexual fluids. In fact, I can read it to you here from...
people who have sex, not just masturbation, but people who have sex often.
Precisely.
And
do not replace that zinc content in their body.
They are prone to mental illness?
Exactly. That is not mental illness. They are prone to
deficiency of the brain?
They are prone to all kinds of diseases.
So a lot of these brilliant people, what, they're not having enough sex, they're not having enough...
No, what I'm saying, Ian, is this. We're looking at potential here. And once there's a potential for something, then it is demonstrable that she never misspoke. Now, here's a point I'm making. if it is now being learned that zinc is so crucial to the functioning of the nervous system, the brain, the hippocampus, which relates to mental illness and Alzheimer's and so forth, if we have learned that zinc is so crucial to the functioning of the immune system,
also cancer could be treated.
And finally, if we have now learned that zinc is very concentrated in the semen and sexual fluids. In fact, I'm going to quote your doctor.
So the argument wouldn't be so much against masturbation. It would be against
the loss of zinc.
Of semen.
Exactly. But the point
so it equally apply to sexual acts.
Exactly. But here's the difference with sexual acts and masturbation. Masturbation is so... masturbation in itself is so addictive that when you can probably have fewer occurrences and meetings of sexual activity with your partner.
See what you mean.
When you are addicted to masturbation itself, you do it so regular and so often. And here's the last thing I'd like to say about zinc.
It's easily...
Exactly. It is now being learned that zinc is a substance which is not easily absorbed in the body, and not all foods has it. Therefore, if you're not careful about the particular foods you take to replace that zinc that you lost in your sexual activities and in masturbation, what you will find is that your body becomes susceptible to diseases because of the declining immune system, because of the interference with the nervous system and the brain. And therefore, all I'm saying is that when you make that connection, you can see therefore, and in fact I went through the list of diseases.
Why was ahead of our time? Contrary to what Andre was saying.
And you remember now, zinc deficiency was discovered only since 1963, and the serious impact it can have on the entire nervous system and the system in terms of immunity and diseases. Just since 1963. And the research continues. In fact, I have so much here I could quote from the experts on not just the matter of zinc itself, but zinc as it relates to masturbation.
Zinc as relates to masturbation?
Oh, yes.
Research
I can quote, let me quote one doctor.
With zinc and masturbation?
Oh, certainly. He says, Dr. David Horobin, medical doctor and PhD from Oxford University, in 1981...
PhD from Oxford?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The amount of zinc in semen is such that one ejaculation may get rid of all the zinc that can be absorbed from the intestines in one day.
Oh.
This has a number of consequences.
Yes.
Unless the amount lost is replaced by increased dietary intake, repeated ejaculation may lead to a real zinc deficiency, with various problems developing, including impotence. And he goes on to even say it is impossible, given the importance of zinc for the brain. The 19th century moralists, of course we should include Ellen White, were correct when they said that repeated masturbation could make one mad. This is from his book, Zinc, written in 1981, page 8. Dr. David Horobin, MD, and I have so many other quotes from other experts.
Just that the moralists of the 19th century,
certainly, he's admitting.
They were not off at all.
Exactly. And that is new discovery.
So perhaps even this research in Alzheimer's and so on could well be...
Who knows?
Could well be connected.
Because if the research is not done specifically into the area to make the connection, you can miss it. And now they're discovering the connection slowly but surely.
Yes. And you would say, as we wrap up there, that the triumphalistic approach, as some would describe it, of Andre Hill is a misguided one. In other words, he should be more careful.
Exactly.
With his examination, and should be open, because I think you had a quote where he said nothing that you guys say that can change his mind or whatever.
He can be rebutted.
Yes. But you are calling for that kind of a patient interrogation of the data and more humility.
Precisely. And you know, interestingly, Ian, as I look at a research here from Dr. Ananda Prasad, who was a pioneer in the research in zinc deficiency, you know, he lists so many things that could go right back to Ellen White's list of diseases.
Yes.
He says, I'm going to read it to you. Continued increase in zinc deficiency may be dangerous to humanity because dietary zinc deficiency, dependent upon severity and other factors, can result in, and I'm going to, not the entire list, the list is so long, can result in immune system dysfunction, and obviously all diseases related to the immune system can therefore result inability to protect cell membranes from viruses, mental lethargy, abnormal neurosensory changes, vision problems.
Oh.
She mentioned even blindness, you know.
What?
Joint pain, there's a long list here I could read from. This is research done since 1963 by the experts.
By the experts. Great to have had you on profile. I mean, my mind, it looks like I'm losing something. This is really just hard talk. I mean, I've been forgetting. I'm forgetting what. Make sure you send me all that research, you know, because I need to.
I can give you a copy. Right,
yes, I need to get that research there on the dangers of masturbation. I will send it to my crew here also. All the guys who work on the set, they need to be aware of what can happen to their health. Derrick Gillespie will be back on Religious Hard Talk next week. There were other charges that Andre Hill made, and these are going to be rebutted here. So tell your friends that an Adventist apologist is replying to Andre Hill's eloquent testimonies on Religious Hard Talk for last season. Catch us next week. Until then, Ian Boyne wishing you a pleasant evening.